Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today, I bring you, what if Ash was like Red Ketchum? Imagine a world with an Ash Ketchum that still loves Pokémon, but has the natural talent of Red. A world where Ash wins more often than not, but still faces adversity. This is the world of Ash Red Ketchum. Chapters start short, but get longer as you progress through the story. The story is called Ash Red Ketchum, Born to be a Winner. The link of both the story and the author will be in the description down below. If you guys want more what if videos such as these, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more.
Unknown location, 11 years in the past. Red collapsed to the rocky beach on his back, blood spewing from where the horn had just pierced his chest. The man had fought the good fight, but his wounds were too many and too severe. Using what little strength he had, Red removed his belt with his pokeballs and tossed it into the raging waves of the ocean behind him. He could only hope his precious partners would be safe. "Return Nidoking," said an approaching voice. Slow methodical footsteps approached the downed trainer as a well-dressed man came into Red's eyesight. The opulent-looking man stared at Red with black eyes and a face filled with amusement. "It seems being champion isn't all that it's cracked up to be." "Is it, Red?" taunted the man. Why you cheated?" "I had you beat," spit back the gravely injured man. The other man scoffed. "Cheated? I did what was necessary to ensure victory and to preserve my organization. Only a child, or an idiot would call that cheating. Seeing as you are an adult, I must assume it is the latter." Red scowled. "People will find out the truth. You can't hide who you are and what you are doing forever," Red said with failing strength. "Perhaps," conceded the other man with a nod. "However, that is not a certainty. What is certain is that Kanto will soon be needing a new champion. I'm afraid the current one will mysteriously disappear, never to be seen again," said the man in a mockingly sad manner. Look behind you," softly muttered Red with a grin. "What are you babbling about now?" questioned the annoyed man with black eyes. He received an answer in the form of an explosion, shaking the entire island. Turning around slowly, the man's face contorted in rage. The island facilities were in flames and completely destroyed. "You insolent fool! Do you realize what you have done?" yelled the man as he turned around, delivered a swift kick to Red's gut. The downed train coughed up blood, but still managed to chuckle at the other man's anger. Sorry. Did I do that? Thanks to your actions, my plans have set back for at least a decade," raged the man. With great effort, he regained his composure before continuing. "No matter. You will die here alone. My organization and I will go on, and my ambitions will be realized," declared the man. With one final look of loathing, the man with the black eyes headed for the ruins of his once great research facility, leaving Red alone on the rocky beach. Time passed and darkness began to encroach Red's vision. He could feel the life leaving him. "Delia. I'm so sorry," thought the man with regret, as a single tear fell from his eye. Red gave a final breath, and his eyes closed shut forever. The champion was dead. 11 years in the present. In the small rural farm community of Pallet Town, the sun began its slow rise. Most residents of Pallet Town, be they people or Pokémon, slept blissfully unaware of the dawn of a new day. Ash Red Ketchum was not most people. He was awake in his room, dressed ready to go, and making one final check over the supplies in his green backpack. Today was the day. The day his life truly began. The day Ash Red Ketchum started his Pokémon journey. The young man in question was a boy of 10 years of age, with messy black hair and a skinny frame. In the wide world of Pokémon, this is the age when children become eligible to start their Pokémon journey. Some wait longer, and some never embark on a journey to begin with, but most do go on a journey at some point. It is a rite of passage undertaken to turn children into mature adults. For Ash, he had been ready for this day for what felt like all his life. He had dedicated his young life to preparing for this day. With the aid of the local professor and Pokémon expert, Samuel Oak, Ash had studied countless hours in anticipation of this day. He read both books and published journals, watched countless league battles, and even assisted the professor in his research with the Pokémon the professor had at his ranch. Though he enjoyed learning from the books and the professor, what truly captured his attention were the many battles. The closeness between trainer and Pokémon, the strategy undertaken in each battle, and the sweet taste of victory. Ash saw this and he craved it. He would rise to the top. He would be a Pokémon master. It was what he was born to do. Satisfied that he had packed everything in his bag, Ash put on his backpack and headed downstairs. He arrived to the smell of a wonderful breakfast and his smiling mother. Delia Ketchum was a pleasant woman in her early 30s with an outgoing personality. She had been a constant source of support for the aspiring Pokémon master and his only parent. Ash had asked her before of his father, but she never said much on the subject. She did say that he was a man of few words, but had a passion for battling and strove to be a Pokémon master, just like you. As for what happened to the man she loved, she did not know. Nobody knew. He disappeared almost 11 years ago, and shortly after Delia found out she was pregnant with her son. Though her son had inherited her outgoing nature, she still saw the same look in her son's eyes that his father had. I made your favorite today, Ash. Pancakes, biscuits, and plenty of bacon. Your cooking is always the best. Man, am I going to miss this, said the boy as he sat down and began to devour the meal. The response made Delia pause and almost frown for a moment. She was proud of her son to be sure, but couldn't help the sadness and worry she felt. Would he be safe, or would he disappear like his father? Caught up in her thoughts, she didn't notice Ash had stopped eating and was looking intently at her with concern. Mom? Are you okay? The smile popped back on her face immediately. Of course, dear. Just lost in thought. Now, you did remember to pack everything, right? Do you have enough underwear? The boy's face lit up a deep red and he sheepishly nodded. He was so fun to mess with. Before they knew it, breakfast was over and the moment she was dreading, and the moment he was looking forward to, had arrived. Both Ash and Delia got up from the table and looked at each other for a moment, saying nothing. Well, Mom. I guess this it, Ash said as he tried to keep his face blank and tears out of his eyes. Delia had no issue showing her emotions and brought her precious son into a deep hug as her eyes did begin to sparkle. Make your dreams come true and promise you will stay safe, Ashy. Above all, know that your mother loves you very much. Losing the battle to completely keep his composure, Ash returned the hug and his eyes began to water as well. I promise to be careful, and I love you, Mom, replied Ash in a soft voice. They stayed that way for a while, but all things come to an end. Firming up and separating himself from his mother, that determined glint returned to his eye. I will be a Pokémon master, exclaimed Ash in an exuberant voice. Giving her one more smile, Ash quickly turned around, opened the front door, and sped off through the early morning breeze, towards Professor Oak's lab. Watching her son take off with such determination, Delia couldn't help but chuckle. He's so much like you. I only wish you could be here to see it, Red. As Ash crossed the small wooden bridge over the slow-flowing river in Pallet, he could finally hear the crowing of the Dodrio, signaling the start of the day for the majority of the Pallet Town community. With luck, that would mean the other trainers starting their journey today would just be getting up, giving Ash the first pick of the starter Pokémon. Getting to the other side of the bridge, Ash looked up and saw the familiar yellow and red laboratory, complete with a four-pronged windmill. Giddy with excitement, Ash ran through the metal gates and sprinted up the steps to the door. Knocking loudly, he exclaimed, Professor Oak. It's me, Ash Ketchum. Ready to get my first Pokémon. The door slowly opened and Ash quickly stepped through only to see the smug face of one Gary Oak. Took your time, didn't you, Ashy boy, said Gary with a smirk on his face. Ash's good mood quickly evaporated upon seeing his childhood rival was already there. Throughout his childhood, Gary Oak had been the proverbial thorn in Ash's side and his near opposite in many ways. While Ash was confident, Gary was cocky. While Ash treated others with kindness, Gary put down those he thought beneath him, especially Ash. While Ash worked hard to study, Gary rested on his laurels and bragged about having a grandpa in the Pokémon business. Speaking of bringing up his grandfather, guess it doesn't hurt having family in the Pokémon business, does it, Ashy? Gramps let me stay over last night, so I could get first choice. Too bad for you, loser, laughed Gary. Take a look at this, Ash, said Gary as he pulled at a Pokeball and began tossing it up and down in the air. We haven't even left Pallet and I am already ahead of you. Hope this wasn't the one you were hoping for, Ashy boy. Gary, you sneaky little. But Gary cut him off. I don't want to hear it, Ash. Besides, I can't afford to waste time talking to you. Smell you later. With that, Gary was quickly gone, still chuckling to himself, while a fuming Ash stayed behind. Just you wait, Gary. We'll see who gets the last laugh when I become a Pokemon Master first. Not wanting Gary to ruin this special day for him, Ash quickly threw Gary out of his mind and focused on the task at hand. Professor Oak. Hello? Is that you, Ash? Earlier than expected, but can't say I'm surprised. Come upstairs, lad, echoed the familiar voice of Professor Samuel Oak. Jogging up the stairs, Ash found the professor drinking a cup of coffee and standing in front of 3 additional Pokeballs. Professor Oak was a man in his early 50s with a full head of gray hair. He was wearing, as always, his customary white lab coat, red shirt, and a nice pair of khaki pants. He was also one of the world's leading experts in Pokemon, specializing in the relationships between people and Pokemon. Oak turned to the youth and smiled. Bright and early, just like my grandson. Are you ready to begin your journey? Ash frowned at the mention of Gary and couldn't help but comment on the professor's apparent favoritism. Yeah, I'm ready. Would have been nice to know that I could have slept at the lab for first choice though, muttered Ash in a clearly irritated voice. Yes, well. You know Gary wouldn't stop bugging me until I gave in and let him stay the night. Sorry about that, replied the embarrassed professor. In any case, there are still 3 wonderful Pokemon to choose from. How about I introduce you to them? With that, the professor picked up the 3 Pokeballs and tossed them in the air, revealing 3 marvelous creatures. Given how much you have studied, I am sure you are more than aware of what species each of these Pokemon are. Care to tell me? Asked the professor with a grin. In front of Ash were 3 Pokemon. At the very left was a dinosaur-like creature with a tail of fire and an orange body. The middle Pokemon had a green bulb on its back with a light bluish-green color for its skin. The final Pokemon at the end with a small brown fox, with 2 pointy ears and a tail. It also had a slightly lighter brown mane. As the professor guessed, Ash knew each of these Pokemon by heart and was not afraid to say it. Sure, Professor. The one on the left is the fire starter, Charmander. The one in the middle is the grass starter, Bulbasaur. The one on the right is the evolution Pokemon, Eevee. Guess that means Gary chose Squirtle. I am a bit confused about the Eevee though. Yes, I thought you might be. Normally the 3 traditional starters are more than enough. However, there are 4 trainers starting their journeys today and I was unable to procure an additional starter. Luckily, I was able to contact one of my associates, a man by the name of Bill, who provided me with this Eevee. Ash perked up at that last comment, having studied some of the research published by the famous Bill. So my boy, I know the inclusion of Eevee may change things a bit, but have you made a decision? Asked the curious Professor Oak. Ash already knew what his first choice would be and smiled to himself. Gary may have chosen first, but Ash's first choice was still there. Seeing the Pokemon in the flesh made him know right away to stick with his gut. I have made my choice, Professor. I choose Charmander, exclaimed Ash with a grin and joy in his eyes. Charmander, the surprised Oak questioned. A good choice to be sure, but I was almost certain you wouldn't hesitate to pick a Pokemon with as much potential and choice as Eevee. Are you sure, Ash? Ash smiled and explained. I did consider it, Professor, but to be honest, I have had my heart set on a Charmander for some time. I don't know why, but it feels right. Besides, as a future Pokemon Master, I am sure I will catch an Eevee someday, Ash said with confidence and his trademark grin. Very well, said the professor. Handing over one of the 3 Pokeballs, the professor began a clearly prepared and often repeated lecture. This is Charmander's Pokeball. A Pokeball, as you know, serves as the storage space and capture device for Pokemon. In addition, I have 5 empty Pokeballs to help you get started, Ash, Oak said as he handed the capsules over. You will have to buy more on your own. Defeating trainers out in the field will result in you winning prize money, which you can then use to resupply and buy other useful items. Lose too often and you may be forced to return home or face starvation out in the wild, Oak stated in a serious voice. In addition, you can only carry a maximum of 6 Pokémon with you at a time. Any other Pokémon you catch will automatically be transported back to the lab. You need only contact me at a local Pokémon Center anytime you want to trade a team member out. Did you get all that, Ash? You bet. Thanks, Professor. I really appreciate it and can't wait to get started, said Ash as he slowly began to turn towards his Charmander. Hold it right there, young man, the professor loudly exclaimed. I still have one more gift for you. Out of his coat pocket, the professor procured a red handheld device. This is your Pokédex. It will serve many purposes on your journey. It can act as a dictionary, giving out many facts on Pokémon, record new data based on your observations during your journey, and also serves as your personal trainer ID. Take it and be sure not to lose it. Properly admonished, Ash held a serious demeanor and gave the professor a solid nod. After observing the young man seriously for a few moments, the professor's smile returned. Oak grabbed the remaining Pokeballs and recalled the other 2 Pokémon. Now I am going to take these 2 with me downstairs to wait for the other 2 trainers. Why don't you stay here for a bit and get to know your new Pokémon, HM? With that, the professor grabbed his coffee and headed down the stairs, leaving Ash and his new Charmander. Alone at last, Ash finally got a good look at how Charmander was dealing with the situation. The Pokémon was eyeing the boy nervously, shifting back and forth. Careful not to make any sudden movements, Ash got down on one knee and looked the Pokémon in the eye. Hi, Charmander. I'm Ash Red Ketchum, but just Ash is fine. It is my dream to be the world's greatest Pokémon master, but it isn't something I can do alone. I need Pokémon who want to be strong and give 100%. I need partners who won't quit when things get hard. Most of all, I need friends who will stick with me till the end. Ash stuck his hand out. Will you be my friend, Charmander? The Pokémon studied the boy, looking deeply into his eyes. There was a fire there. An inner fire that matched the fire burning within Charmander's little body. The boy was sincere and with his help, Charmander could grow strong. Charmander, shouted the little fire type as it tackled its new trainer in a hug, knocking them both over. Ash was slightly astonished at being knocked over, but this feeling was swiftly replaced with one of triumph. Awesome, Charmander. Together I will be unstoppable. In fact, want to go see if one of the other new trainers wants a quick battle? The boy enthusiastically asked. Char. Great. Let's get down there then. Ash picked himself off the floor and sprinted down the staircase with Charmander quickly following. He arrived to an irate boy with blue hair, a brown vest, and a gaudy pink shirt. The boy in question was yelling at the professor. What do you mean another trainer picked Charmander? I had my heart set on him. Not some crummy little plant. The early bird gets the worm, or well, the Pokémon, replied the irritated Professor Oak. Besides, Bulbasaur is a perfectly good Pokémon. Now stop throwing a tantrum, or you will walk away empty-handed. The blue-haired boy ignored the warning and was about to say something nasty when he spotted Ash and the coveted Charmander. So you're the sneak who went and stole my Charmander, ain't you? Proclaimed the boy with a finger pointed at Ash. Annoyed at the boy's tantrum, Ash heatedly responded, I didn't steal anything. I woke up early and picked Charmander fair and square. My name is not Sneak either. It's Ash. I don't care what you call yourself, kid. Hand over the Charmander if you know what's good for you, demanded the boy as he began to approach the Charmander. Damian stopped this outlandish behavior at once, shouted Professor Oak. If you take one more step, I am throwing you out empty-handed. The blue-haired boy, or rather Damian, paused at this. Then a smug grin returned to his face. Hold on now. I ain't going to just snatch it out of his hand. How about this then, Ash? I challenge you to a battle. When I win, I get Charmander and you can keep the plant. I'll even use it to put you in your place, twerp. Ash was dumbfounded at the boy's offer. Why would he risk Charmander? No deal, Damian. Charmander is already my friend and partner. Why would I risk that in a battle? Oh. I guess that spiky hair kid had it right then when he told me you were a spineless joke of a trainer. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be embarrassed either, laughed Damian as he started to walk away and grabbed Bulbasaur's Pokeball. One would think Ash would be mature enough to let the insult slide. Well, that person had clearly never hung around Ash on a regular basis. A childhood full of bullying from his rival Gary, his inherited outgoing personality from his mother. And his young age produced a predictable response. Fine. Charmander and I will wipe the floor with you. Now Ash, started Professor Oak, but Ash quickly interrupted him. No, Professor. I am going to teach Damian some manners. You have seen how hard I have worked. Have some faith in me, said the boy in a resolute tone. Professor Oak knew Ash wouldn't be swayed and reluctantly nodded. Damian turned around now leering at Ash. You're going to regret that, kid. The two stared each other down for what felt like ages until the professor finally stepped in to re-establish some semblance of order. Now this lab is no place for a battle, so settle down. Follow me out back and you can hold your battle in the ranch. Striding forward, Damian returned the Bulbasaur to his Pokeball, past both the professor and Ash, and headed outdoors, maintaining his confident smirk. Ash and Professor Oak followed close behind, with the latter giving worrying looks towards his young companion. The group soon made it outside and the two trainers stood opposite each other on a long grassy field. Professor Oak took his position in the center to serve as a referee. This will be a one-on-one battle. The battle will end when one Pokémon is unable to continue or the trainer forfeits. Before signaling the start of the match, Professor Oak gave one final look to both boys. Damian was cocky and assured of his victory, with a vicious smile on his face and a manic gleam in his eyes. Ash, on the other hand, just stood there in a calm and collected manner. What Oak did notice was the look in Ash's eyes. That calculating look that exuded a great strength. It was a look he hadn't seen in almost 11 years. Begin, shouted Professor Oak. Damian immediately released his Bulbasaur as Ash called out Charmander. Alright, you stupid plant. You better win this for me, or you will be in a world of hurt later on, promised Damian. This did nothing good for the poor Bulbasaur, that was already nervous at the prospect of its first battle. In fact, the poor thing began to slightly shake. Meanwhile, Ash spoke softly to Charmander in a voice so low that nobody else could hear. Charmander. I know this isn't the way either of us probably envisioned our first battle. I acted a bit rashly accepting this challenge and should never have risked our friendship over this. However, I ask that you put your trust in me, friend. Like I said, together we will be unstoppable. Charmander stared at Ash for a while, before giving the boy a nod and turned towards the Bulbasaur. Damian made the first move. Tackle attack and make it snappy. The grass Pokémon did its best to focus on the task at hand and began to charge at the fire type. For Ash, things seemed to slow down as he analyzed the situation. Barring any egg moves, a fresh Bulbasaur only knows tackle and growl. Charmander knows scratch and growl as well. No environmental advantage either, given neither Pokémon knew any elemental moves yet. A pretty even match at first glance. But Ash knew better. Charmander, when Bulbasaur is about 5 feet away, I want you to dodge with a short, precise jump. Wait for my signal. Now. The fire type easily jumped out of the way of the tackle as the grass type blew by. As Bulbasaur turned around, Ash made his first move. Growl now. Charmander let out a mighty growl, intimidating the Bulbasaur and lowering its attack. What are you doing? Tackle that fire lizard and don't let it get away, shouted Damian. Ash couldn't help but be disappointed at the predictable aggressive strategy that Damian was employing. But with Charmander on the line, he stayed focused. Let's keep it up, Charmander. Same strategy as before. Keep your dodges concise, but unpredictable. The battle continued in the same fashion. Damian ordering an attack, Charmander dodging, and then Charmander growling at the Bulbasaur. This continued for some time until Damian finally lashed out at somebody other than his poor Pokémon. Is this a Pokémon battle or not? Fight me, kid, and stop running away. Ash finally let a smirk on his face and looked at Damian. Be careful what you ask for, Damian. Bulbasaur began another charge, but this time Ash instructed Charmander differently. Charmander, let the Bulbasaur get as close as possible. Now scratch directly into Bulbasaur's face. The Bulbasaur, exhausted from tackling over and over and with little attack power left, was unable to dodge her and offered little resistance as the two Pokémon clashed. Charmander's scratch scored a direct hit and flung the poor grass Pokémon back to its stunned trainer. Get up, plant! Get up! Are you listening? Get up! No matter how much Damian screamed, Bulbasaur was unable to answer the trainer's command, and blissfully fell into a state of unconsciousness. With a sigh of relief, Professor Oak called the match. Bulbasaur is unable to battle. Ash and Charmander win. Damian still couldn't fathom how that punk beat him. You must have cheated or something. No way a talentless hack like you could beat me. Ash couldn't help but brag a bit as he retorted, I didn't need to, Damian. You made the battle far too easy. You see, we both had two starter Pokémon that seemed to be evenly matched, but if you knew your Pokémon, you would know that a new Charmander still has an advantage over a new Bulbasaur. Annoyed and angry, Damian asked, and that is? Speed, Ash replied. Charmander at its core has a higher base potential for speed. Keeping this in mind, it was easy to have Charmander dodge your attacks and whittle down Bulbasaur's attack power, all the while Bulbasaur tired itself out from all those tackles. Charmander was also able to dodge in short, efficient movements, conserving energy. After that, all there was left to do was a quick direct hit and Bulbasaur was out for the count. You lose, Damian. Done with the bully, Ash walked to his Charmander and got down to his level once more on a knee, rubbing the Pokémon on the head. I'm really sorry for putting you in this situation, buddy, but I couldn't be more prouder. You were amazing out there, Charmander. The young fire-type preened and punched Ash's shoulder in a gentle manner, as if to say, all is forgiven. Sadly for the duo, Damian was not done yet. Out of his sleeve, another Pokeball emerged and he quickly called it out. Doduo. Fury attack on that kid and the Charmander now. Ash and Charmander could do nothing but turn around as the giant bird charged towards the two of them with a sharp beak and at a speed far greater than Bulbasaur. Professor Oak had no Pokémon on hand and was too far away to offer any aid. It looked like things were about to get ugly. Just before the attack came, and faster than anyone could see, a yellow blur sprinted out of some nearby bushes in front of Ash and Charmander, and a flash of lightning emerged from its body headed right for the Doduo. The sound of crowing Dodrio woke the little yellow mouse creature from its spot sleeping under a tree into a hyper-alert status. Looking around wearily, Pikachu noticed no immediate threats and allowed itself to relax. Stretching out its front paws and ironing the kinks out of its body, Pikachu took off towards its first meal of the day. Rash by nature. Pikachu's favorite foods had a bitter taste to them. Luckily, for the mouse Pokémon, it knew exactly where to find them. For the past few weeks, Pikachu had been camping out near a vast space of land with varying ecosystems all in one area with numerous Pokémon in each segment. Ponds, plains, grasslands, rocky areas, and more all made up this single area. It was rather unique in Pikachu's opinion. One of the biggest perks of the area were all the berry trees and bushes. That was where Pikachu was headed. There was a wooden fence to get past, but that was little trouble for the rodent, as he slipped through a hole. Safely on the other side, Pikachu made his way to the forest area, where grass and bug Pokémon often congregated. Walking carefully and with purpose, Pikachu carefully avoided these Pokémon, finally arriving at a bush full of delicious bitter raspberries. Taking one final look around to ensure he was alone, Pikachu was satisfied and dove into the cover of the bush to hide itself and snack on some of the berries. As he ate his fill, Pikachu couldn't help but think how nice it was here, especially compared to the rest of his short life. From the beginning, things had never been easy for Pikachu. Born the runt in a litter of Piku, the small Pokémon was quickly ostracized and kicked out of the nest. Since then, Pikachu had been out on its own fending for itself in the hard wilds. Not everything was bad about the situation though. Pikachu developed a chip on its shoulder and he used it to drive himself to great heights. When not traveling, eating, or sleeping, the small mouse dedicated its time to training. It battled hard and battled often. Pikachu didn't always win, but each battle made him stronger. He was always careful to pick his opponents too. Didn't want to end up helpless and a meal for a wild Pokémon that had a craving for Pikachu after all. It had been a hard life, but Pikachu was finally seeing some results, having evolved from a Piku just a few weeks back. After evolving, Pikachu felt more comfortable venturing out further from the familiar forests in which he grew up, which is what led him to where he currently was. The easy access to good food was great, thought Pikachu, but unfortunately none of the local Pokémon seemed interested in battle. Every time he tried to start a fight, a few undesirable outcomes would happen. The Pokémon would ignore him and flee, it would call friends which would force Pikachu to leave, or that old pesky human in the white coat would come out and try to catch Pikachu. The last one both annoyed and amused the small little rodent. Giving up on the prospect of battle due to interference was annoying, but seeing that old man try to catch up to the speedy Pikachu was good fun. Pikachu enjoyed leading the silly human on wild goose chases, often ending with the human tripping and falling into some form of substance like mud or water. Pikachu did not completely underestimate the human though. He had seen the strength the human's yellow dragon-type Pokémon while spying on him. The strength it showed in breaking the quarrels between the varying factions living on this land and the power from the moves it displayed mesmerized the little mouse Pokémon. Yet, it obeyed and stayed with the old human. This was not a completely unknown concept to Pikachu, having run into its fair share of trainers and their Pokémon on its own journey. However, Pikachu had never been too concerned with these pairs in the past, especially since it beat a few trainers and their Pokémon, even as a Piku. These two were different though. If Pikachu was honest with himself, he envied the camaraderie and power the two had. Too bad it didn't look like the old man would be leaving anytime soon, otherwise Pikachu might have considered letting himself be caught. Oh well. Pikachu went ahead and finished up his musings and meal. He was just about to head out when his ears picked up the sound of the human's back door opening. He turned towards the sound and spied on the door from his bush, expecting the same human to walk out. Instead of the regular human, out stepped two children, then followed by the familiar old man. The children took positions opposite one another with the old man standing near the middle. Soon after, two Pokémon were called out. A Charmander and a Bulbasaur from what Pikachu could tell. This was also something Pikachu has seen before in his travels. Two trainers and their Pokémon partners about to battle. Pikachu considered leaving, but figured that he might as well enjoy some entertainment before continuing on his way and decided to settle in. At first, he started to regret the decision to stay. The battle was pretty boring with one human screaming his head off, while the other simply had his partner Pokémon dodge attacks and growl over and over. Then it happened. The boring human with the Charmander instructed his Pokémon to charge in and attack the oncoming Bulbasaur. With one scratch attack, Bulbasaur was out for the count. Pikachu was amazed. Neither Pokémon seemed to be anything special, but that Charmander took out the Bulbasaur in one hit. Straining his ears, Pikachu could pick up the words Charmander's trainer spoke regarding his strategy. Again, Pikachu was impressed with the boy's knowledge. Seeing him kneel down and congratulate his partner with an affectionate head rub and soothing words only increased his opinion of the black-haired boy. He was considering his observations when his sharp eyes caught movement from the other human child. Out of nowhere, the blue-haired loudmouth summoned a Doduo and ordered it to attack the human and his Charmander. Pikachu could see that the boy and his Charmander would have no time to react, and the older human was also stupefied. Without thinking, the electric mouse Pokémon burst from the bushes with a quick attack to jump in between the attacking Doduo and the vulnerable pair. Pikachu immediately followed this up with a quick thundershock, and with the Doduo inches from the small rodent, it had no chance of dodging. Pikachu! Cried the new identifiable Pikachu as it let loose a vicious point-blank thundershock at the defenseless Doduo. The twin-headed avian lit up like a Christmas tree and promptly fainted on the spot. Presented with another single-hit knockout, Damian experienced a significant lapse in judgment. "You scrawny little rat." "Take this," shouted Damian as began a surprising charge towards the mouse Pokémon with his fist raised high. Pikachu you! Frozen in literal shock and extra crispy, Damian too fell to the floor and fainted. Ash and Professor Oak could do nothing but gape at the Pikachu, who looked quite pleased with the destruction it had wrought. Professor Oak recovered first as he soon recognized the Pikachu as the little pest that had been riling up several of the local Pokémon with its attempts to engage them in battle. As it was currently standing right next to Ash and his Charmander, the professor decided that a gentle approach might be best, especially since the little Pokémon showed no hesitation in unleashing lightning on anything that moved. "Be careful, Ash. That Pikachu can be quite dangerous and has been stirring up trouble with the Pokémon in the various habitats on the ranch for the past few weeks. Now get up and back away slowly." Ash, of course, ignored him, prompting the professor to face fault. Ash looked at Pikachu in the eyes with a fierce expression and Pikachu returned the gaze with equal fervor. Moments passed as no sounds were made. Ash spared a glance at Charmander and got a nod. Finally, Ash stood up and got pumped before looking at Pikachu and declaring, "Pikachu, we challenge you to a battle." "Pika Pikachu," cried the yellow mouse as it jumped back and sparks came out of its cheeks in anticipation of an actual challenge. Having recovered and dusted himself off, Professor Oak tried to intervene with another plea to Ash's rationality. "Ash, I know you are skilled, but no amount of skill can compensate for the power that Pikachu has. For goodness sake, use that brain of yours, boy." "Maybe you're right, Professor, but I said it once and I will say it again. I don't know why, but this feels right and I'm going to do it," the cheeky boy replied. The professor face-faulted once more, allowing Ash and Charmander to focus on the battle at hand. Once again, time seemed to slow down for the young man as he surveyed the battlefield before him. He had to admit that the professor had it right. Pikachu had the clear advantage here. The mouse Pokémon was easily faster than Charmander and its ability to use its given element further widened the gap. If he was going to pull this off, Ash needed a lucky break. Thinking on his feet, he quickly pulled out his Pokédex and analyzed his partner's moveset. "Well, that was unexpected," thought Ash as he saw a certain egg move. Looking at his terrain more closely, Ash realized it might be just what they need to win. "Stay alert, Charmander. This Pikachu will be far tougher to beat than Damian and Bulbasaur." The fire type focused right away and braced himself for another battle. Feeling like it waited long enough, Pikachu quickly sprinted at the fire type with a quick attack. Don't try to dodge it, Charmander. Instead, meet it head-on with a scratch attack and follow up with Growl. The two Pokémon struck one another with great intensity. Thanks to Pikachu's speed and experience, Charmander suffered more damage, but it still managed to get off the Growl and lower Pikachu's attack. "Hang in there, Charmander, you are doing great!" "Pikachu!" cried the Pokémon as it shot a Thundershock at the Charmander. "Dodge and jump 10 feet to the left. Fire off a Growl in mid-air," shouted Ash. Since this attack came from a distance, Charmander was able to dodge with ease and managed to further lower Pikachu's attack. Contrary to the belief of some individuals, Pokémon are quite intelligent, and Pikachu was no exception. This looked like the same strategy that the trainer used against the blue-haired punk. If he was going to keep dodging and having Charmander lower his attack, Pikachu would need to get closer. Pikachu began to charge straight at Charmander as the fire type landed in the spot his trainer had indicated, on a spot with no grass and some rock. Once again, Ash allowed a small smile. "Charmander, hold your ground and let Pikachu come right at you." The fire type trusted his trainer and stood still, though slightly confused. Pikachu continued his charge and stopped right in front of Charmander, ready to let loose a powerful Thundershock. Just as Ash planned. Grab onto Pikachu with one hand and don't let go. With your other hand, use Metal Claw and dig into the rocky ground below your feet. "Pikachu!" cried Pikachu once more, but it was quickly surprised when the wincing Charmander grabbed onto him and stuck its shining claw into the ground. Charmander, meanwhile, felt a great pain at first, but fought through it. As soon as its metal claw hit the ground, the pain stopped, but the electricity kept flowing from the mouse to Charmander's claw and into the ground. Realizing that its attack was doing no good, Pikachu tried to stop the flow of electricity, but was ironically shocked when it found it could not cut off the circulation. Like a lightning rod, the metal claw continued to absorb lightning. Charmander held on tight, preventing the electric type from jumping away as well, and the mouse began to panic. It took a few minutes, but soon enough, Pikachu ran out of electricity and began to dizzily sway. It was then that Ash made his finishing move. "Let it go and give it your best metal claw, Charmander." Charmander released the electric mouse and put the rest of its energy into one powerful attack as it swiped the Pikachu with his glowing claws. Pikachu was launched high into the air before making its descent. Ash had no plans on letting it hit the ground though. He grabbed a small round ball from his belt, pressed a button enlarging the device, and made the first throw of his Pokémon trainer career. "Go Pokeball!" Right on target, the ball crashed into the yellow mouse a good 6 to 7 feet above the ground. Pikachu immediately turned into a source of red energy and was sucked into the device, which then hit the floor. Ash, Charmander, and Professor Oak watching in silence as the Pokeball began to wiggle back and forth. After what felt like ages, the jiggling stopped and a clear ding was heard. Ash Red Ketchum had captured his very first Pokémon. The revelation began to sink in and a huge grin appeared on Ash's face as he picked up his Charmander and began to celebrate. "We did it! You're the best, Charmander. Look at that, our first new friend and our first step towards being the best." The two continued to dance and make fools out of themselves until the professor finally cleared his throat, catching their attention. "Ash, what you did was idiotic, reckless, irresponsible, lucky, and well, downright impressive. To think a rookie trainer was able to subdue a powerful wild Pokémon like that Pikachu, and on the first day of his journey no less." Embarrassed at the praise, Ash couldn't help but blush. "Ah well. It was just as much thanks to Charmander here that we caught Pikachu in the first place. His ability to use Metal Claw to conduct the electricity and his bravery in taking the initial Thundershock really made the difference." Now Charmander was blushing red, despite his already orange complexion. "On the other hand, and I am not sure how much good this will do, but please try be more careful in the future, Ash. You have friends and family at home that will worry a great deal about you, myself included," said Professor Oak in a softer tone. Now feeling slightly guilty, Ash nodded his head before picking up the Pokeball of his new Pikachu. "You've had quite the ordeal for your first day, young man," Oak noted as he looked at the weary trainer and his even more weary Pokémon. "I suppose since Gary did spend the night yesterday, it is only fair I give you the same option. Why don't you head inside and wash up? You can stay here for the evening and leave at first light tomorrow." The professor offered with a smile. Ash gratefully accepted the offer and took his Charmander and new Pikachu inside to rest, leaving Professor Oak to deal with the unconscious Damian, Doduo, and Bulbasaur. He really was getting too old for this, thought the professor as he began to clean up the mess. After a good night's sleep, it was déjà vu all over again for Ash Red Ketchum. The sun was just showing up on the horizon and once again, Ash was double-checking his supplies for his now delayed journey. Not that he minded the delay when he thought back to the day before. Ash not only received his very first Pokémon, but he also won his first trainer battle, and managed to catch his first wild Pokémon to boot. All in all, a good day's work. Still, Ash couldn't help but frown when he recalled the one major blemish on the day. Damian was a bully. Ash had obviously dealt with that before, growing up with Gary, but Damian took it a step further. The way he treated Bulbasaur really riled Ash up. Mercifully, the poor Pokémon had fainted before Damian could make good on his threat to bring physical harm to the plant, as he called it. Soon after, the snake's hidden Doduo and Damian himself met a similar fate thanks to Pikachu. After cleaning up and leaving his Pokémon and the professor's healing device, Ash went back outside looking for the professor and found him talking to an Officer Jenny, while Damian raged unheard behind the soundproof doors of the officer's police car. Verbal and attempted physical assault of a Pokémon constituted abuse, which was more than enough to have your Pokémon license revoked. Officer Jenny promised to escort the young man home and Damian would be prohibited from going near, much less owning a Pokémon, for at least a few years. As for Bulbasaur and Doduo, Professor Oak took in the former to treat its wounds, while Officer Jenny confiscated the Doduo, promising to find a good home for it. Ash pestered the professor multiple times last night about Bulbasaur's health and mental state, until the annoyed man sent the kid to bed. Having thought about that unpleasant business more than enough, Ash's mind focused back on Charmander and Pikachu. He really was proud of the way his starter and first friend fought. The bravery Charmander showed in taking that powerful thundershock and the strength he displayed in fighting through it amazed the young trainer. Then there was Pikachu. Ash's thoughts were a bit all over the place when it came to the yellow mouse. On one hand, he was grateful that Pikachu stepped in and protected him and Charmander, not to mention impressed with its power. On the other hand, Ash still didn't know why it did so in the first place. From what the professor had told him, Pikachu had been a nuisance since it showed up at the ranch a few weeks ago. Ash wanted answers and he would have them when he talked to Pikachu later on. Finished with his thoughts and satisfied that everything was in order, Ash exited the spare room he was allowed to sleep in and walked into the main lab area on the second floor where he first received Charmander, finding the professor was already there sitting at a desk with 3 Pokeballs and drinking his normal morning coffee. "Good morning, Ash. Did you sleep well?" asked the kind older man. "You bet, Professor. I'm raring and ready to go," the boy exclaimed in dramatic pose. "Yes, I can see that," chuckled the professor. "But before you head out and conquer the world, I have a few things for you, my boy. First, here are your Pokeballs back," said the professor as he handed 2 of the 3 Pokeballs over. "There is also the matter of your prize money," at which point the professor pulled out a large stash of money, commonly known as Poke. "When did I earn any prize money?" questioned the boy. At this the professor almost glared at the boy. "Did you or did you not pay attention to my lecture yesterday, young man? Anytime a trainer defeats another in battle, official league rules dictate that prize money must be awarded. You defeated Damian in battle, Ash, which means you are entitled to a reward. You have shown great potential in battle as a strategist, but you really need to pick up the pace in other areas. Lucky for you, I did remember an office Jenny allowed me to get your reward from that other boy." "Hey! I didn't forget," mumbled a very red Ash. "Well, that aside, here is the money. Be sure not to lose it or spend it all at once," warned Professor Oak, who then handed over the money. "Now there is one final item I wish to discuss with you," Oak said with a strange glint in his eye. "I have a young Pokémon here with little experience to the world, besides human cruelty. This Pokémon could stay here of course, but without exposure to the outside world and somebody to show him a different way, I fear the young creature would suffer prolonged mental harm. It is fortuitous then that I have a young man with a good heart about to embark on his journey," Oak smiled. In a quiet and serious voice, Ash said, "Professor, are you asking me to bring Bulbasaur with me on my journey?" Not skipping a beat, Professor Oak confirmed the question. "Yes, Ash. I believe that would be best for both Bulbasaur and you as well. Bulbasaur will learn compassion and love, while you will experience the difficulties of helping another rise from adverse circumstances. This will help you to grow as both a person and a future Pokémon master. What do you say, Ash?" the professor asked as he picked up Bulbasaur Pokeball and held it out. "I will not judge you harshly if you say no." Ash placed a hand on the ball, but not quite taking it yet, and looked at Professor Oak. "Yes," Ash said in a firm voice. "I will take Bulbasaur on my journey and help him grow strong. More importantly, I promise to show him the true meaning of friendship." "You have my word on that, Professor. And I know you are good for it, Ash. At least when it comes to anything related to Pokémon," he said with a chuckle and released his hold on Bulbasaur's Pokeball, allowing Ash to clip it onto his belt with the other 2. "I'm afraid that is all I have for you, Ash. I know I have research to do and the time has come for you to head out on your adventure." "Best of luck, lad," said Oak, clapping the boy on the back for good measure. Giddy with excitement at the prospect of finally leaving Pallet, Ash gave a quick, "Thanks, Professor. I promise to call you and Mom when I reach Viridian City," and took off down the stairs, and out the door in what seemed like no time at all, leaving behind a befuddled, but amused Professor Oak. Sprinting down the dirt road out of town, Ash couldn't help but be excited. Pokémon, battles, and adventure all lied on the path ahead. He stopped to give one final look at his hometown, vowing not to return until he was far stronger. Striking a dramatic pose, he exclaimed, "I will come back a Pokémon master. I swear it." As he turned back towards the path ahead, he heard a high-pitched roar in the sky. Looking up, Ash saw a massive bird with beautiful gold, red, green and white patterns. Pulling out his Pokédex, he found that the device had no data on the beast. The creature flew west, leaving behind a rainbow and a young boy in awe, as the sun rose, both in the sky and on Ash's journey. Continuing down the grassy plains and open fields of Route 1, albeit walking now, Ash was still in a jubilant mood. 3 awesome Pokémon were at his side, or in their Pokeballs, and he witnessed what looked like a giant mythical bird Pokémon fly through the skies a few hours back. He would definitely have to ask the professor about it when he reached Viridian City. The sound of one of his Pokeballs opening of its own accord snapped Ash back to the present. Out popped Pikachu, who proceeded to stretch out its body and pop a few muscles that were stiff from the time it had been confined in the Pokeball. "I didn't know they could do that," Ash muttered to nobody in particular as he looked at his small mouse Pokémon. The sound of his voice immediately drew Pikachu's attention to Ash, and the cheeky little mouse had the gall to cross its arms and start patting one of its feet with a grumpy expression on its face. Are you mad at me, Pikachu?" "Pika," said the mouse in a stiff voice as it nodded. "Was it because I captured you?" asked the slightly worried boy. The annoyed Pikachu shook his head and pointed towards the Pokeball on Ash's belt. "Oh," Ash said, looking at the little device which he removed from his belt and held. "Do you not like hanging out in the Pokeball? Add this." The Pikachu nodded, relieved that Ash picked up on its annoyance somewhat quickly. "No worries then. Besides, I've been wanting to talk to you for a bit and could use the company," grinned Ash as he sat down and crossed his legs directly opposite Pikachu. Pika, the Pokémon, questioned, clearly wondering what the boy wanted to talk about. "First, thanks for saving me and Charmander, Pikachu. I really don't know what would have happened if you didn't jump in when you did," Ash said with sincerity. Pika. Pikachu. "Maybe it wasn't a big deal to you, but it meant a lot to me and I won't forget it," Ash replied. Getting to what he really wanted to talk about though, Ash became more serious. "I guess my main question is why you let yourself get caught." "Pikachu?" Ash smirked at the questioning denial. "We both know you could have run away after knocking out that Doduo. The professor told me you have been trying to get the other Pokémon at the ranch to battle, but you always fled whenever Professor Oak came near. Why didn't you run from me? If the professor in his years of experience couldn't catch you, there was no way I could have." Boy, this human was far smarter than Pikachu gave him credit for. The Pokémon dropped the questioning facade and stood up looking at Ash with sparks coming out of its cheeks and a burning desire in its eyes. "Pie Pikachu Pika Pie. Pika Pika Pikachu." Ash thought for a few moments, trying to process what the Pokémon was conveying. "I think I get it. You want to be stronger too and go on your own journey, right?" "Pika," said the small Pikachu, still impressed with the boy's understanding. "Did he speak Pokémon? Nah, that would be crazy." Ash found himself smiling again, thinking he had found a kindred spirit that wanted to push itself to the max in Pikachu. With him by his side, they could and would go far. "I can respect that, Pikachu, in fact it really fires me up. I would be happy to have you come along with me on this journey, but I do have a few conditions." "Pika? We will train hard and I will do it right alongside you for the most part. Can't exactly use Thundershock or any other elemental moves, hey?" And Pikachu chuckled alongside him. "Being good or even great will not be enough though. We will strive to be the very best. But at the same time, you can't just attack random Pokémon or teammates anytime you want. There will be plenty of time for training and getting stronger, but not all the time," Ash firmly said to the cowed Pokémon, who nodded. Speaking softly now, Ash wrapped up his speech with one final condition. "Most importantly, if we travel together, we do it as more than Pokémon and trainer. We do it as friends. Are you with me, Pikachu?" asked Ash as he held out his arms in a wide manner. Pikachu didn't speak, but his eyes did glisten as he compared Ash's words and actions to those of his supposed family. "Pikachu?" Ash asked in concern. Snapping out of it, Pikachu jumped into the boy's arms and nuzzled his cheek with an affirmative, "Pie Pikachu." Ash returned the affection and hugged Pikachu tight. "Welcome to the team, pal." After a while the two separated and Ash figured that he might as well bring out the rest of the team. Bulbasaur might be a little trouble, but then again he had only been exposed to Damian for around an hour at most. Hopefully, everything would be okay. With that, Ash grabbed the two other Pokeballs and let Charmander and Bulbasaur out. Charmander came out of the device and stretched a bit, much like Pikachu did, before turning to Ash and smiling. Pikachu gave the fire type a little wave and smile, which the fire type returned. Bulbasaur though came out of his Pokeball shaking and looking around in fear at the unfamiliar territory. It was especially scared of the human in his presence. Seeing this and sighing, Ash turned to Pikachu and Charmander. "Hey guys. Why don't you two head off into the fields over there for a bit and get to know one another? Maybe do some light training if you feel up to it? I think I need to talk with Bulbasaur alone." The two Pokémon saw the scared creature and nodded to Ash before moving away, leaving Ash and Bulbasaur together. Keeping his distance from the Bulbasaur, who was still shaking and scared of the boy in front of him, Ash slowly got on the ground again and kept his hands in his lap before speaking in a calm, slow manner. "Hey Bulbasaur. You don't have to be scared. I promise not to yell at you or hurt you. All I want to do is talk." The Pokémon was a tad skeptical at this and did not change his attitude. "How about this?" proposed Ash. "I will stay here and keep my hand on my knees and you can stay there standing or sitting, whatever is more comfortable." "Nothing else has to happen?" Bulbasaur eyed Ash with suspicion, before slowly nodding and sitting down a good 15 feet away from the human. He stopped shaking, but his eyes were locked onto Ash. Ash continued, glad to have Bulbasaur's attention now. "Listen, what happened yesterday with Damian? I can't tell you how sorry I am that you had to go through that. Nobody deserves to be treated like that." Bulbasaur rolled its eyes. "Tell me something I don't know," it thought. "I get it. Hard to just believe words alone, right? That is why I will make you this promise now to show I mean business. Bulbasaur, until you feel comfortable battling, you don't have to do it. You don't even have to train if you don't want to. In fact, even if you never feel up to battling, I will be okay with that too. I just want to be friends and for you to be happy, Bulbasaur. Does that sound fair?" Bulbasaur's eyes widened. The human was giving him an actual choice. Well, these were still only words, but Bulbasaur figured he could give Ash a chance. If Ash made him battle, he would know not to trust a human again, but if not, well, time would tell. Bulbasaur slowly nodded to agree. Excited that he got through to Bulbasaur, Ash jumped up with glee, which of course startled the poor thing again. "Oh, I'm sorry about that. Just a bit excited that you will be joining the gang. Do you want to meet the others, or go back in the Pokeball?" "Bulba," said the grass type, as it pointed a paw towards the Pokeball on Ash's belt. "Had enough for one day, huh? I understand," returned Bulbasaur, and the Pokemon was sucked back into the sphere. "I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. Take your time and get better, Bulbasaur," Ash whispered, looking at Bulbasaur's Pokeball. Off in the distance, he could see Pikachu and Charmander chatting and showing off some moves to one another. It was about time to get some training in. Ash was a Pokemon trainer after all. He headed off towards the duo itching to get started. Pikachu and Charmander found that they had a dream in common. Both Pokemon wanted to get stronger, and both claimed they would thrash the other next time they battled. Charmander bragged about its prior victory, while Pikachu pointed out that the fire type had gotten lucky, and would not have stood a chance if Ash hadn't come up with his metal claw strategy. Needless to say, the two became rivals and fast friends. They were practicing various moves when Ash walked over to greet them. "Hey guys," Ash said, grabbing their attention. "Bulbasaur isn't quite up to battling yet, so until that happens, or until we get a new team member, it will just be us training." Tutu nodded with understanding and waited for their trainer to continue. "Before we get started with some training, I figure it might be a good idea to talk about our goals. I know you both want to be strong," at which point both Pokemon smirked and nodded. "I also know that I want to be a Pokemon master." "What does that mean though?" Pikachu and Charmander shrugged, having never really thought of it that way. "I am not sure there is a finish line out there, because I know I want to continue to improve and I'm sure both of you do as well. But there is a goal we can do our best to reach to measure our progress. That goal is to become champion of a region, Ash said with a determined look. At the Pokémon's confusion, he continued. The champion is recognized as the ultimate master in the region and their Pokémon the strongest in the region as well. To become champion, we will need to defeat the current champion, Lance in our region's case, and his Elite Four, who are recognized as 4 powerful trainers with skill only less than that of the current champion. Not everyone gets to challenge the Elite Four and the champion though. To earn that right, we need to win the annual Pokémon League tournament and to even qualify for that. We need to earn 8 gym badges by defeating gym leaders scattered across the region. I know it is a lot, but it's a goal, and one we can use to drive us to train harder. Are you with me, guys? Pika Pika. Char Char. Glad to hear it, Ash smiled. Our first gym challenge will be against the Pewter City Gym. The gym specializes in rock-type Pokémon. This caused both Pokémon to grimace as Charmander was weak to rock types, while Pikachu's electric attacks would do nothing since most rock types had a dual ground typing. Ash saw this and of course tried to motivate them. Hey, don't look so glum, guys. I know we don't exactly have the advantage, but all that means is that we will have to train that much harder. Both cheered up at that and were ready to go. That's what I want to see. The first thing we need to do is expand your movesets. Charmander, Metal Claw is a great tool to have and will come in handy against those rock types, but that is far from the only challenge ahead of us. I think learning Ember and Smokescreen would be great starting points. As a fire type, your fire moves should come easier and will be more powerful, making Ember a must. Smokescreen can be a good cover and mess with our opponent's eyesight. I'm not sure what the best way would be to go about getting you to learn these moves, but I do have some ideas. Look for some wood around here and bring it back. Then we will begin. Not quite following Ash's logic yet. But trusting his trainer, Charmander went off in search of some wood. In the meantime, Ash focused on Pikachu. Pikachu, your biggest strength by far is your speed, and in order to defeat the rock types, we are going to build on that. From your last battle with Charmander, I noticed that you outspeeded him, which allowed your quick attack to do more damage than his scratch. That is the edge we will need to pierce through rock-hard defenses. We will combine that with Iron Tail to deal some real damage. Before we get to Iron Tail though, I would like you to learn Agility to increase your speed. From what I've read, Agility is like a quick attack that lasts longer and can increase your speed throughout the entire battle. Try chaining together quick attacks to see if you can pick up on anything Pikachu. With that, Pikachu got to work as Ash looked around for Charmander. He found the fire type a few minutes later with a bundle of sticks. Great job, Charmander, said Ash as he patted the Pokémon's head and took the wood. Ash found a dry spot with little to no grass and quickly made a fire by rubbing some of the sticks together, and beckoned Charmander to come close. This may sound funny, Charmander, but try breathing in the smoke the fire produces through your nose and then exhale through your mouth. The repetition may get your body used to the process and even help you produce your own smoke. Once you get that down, we can work on heating it up and turning it into a proper ember. Thrilled with the idea of learning some proper fire-type moves, Charmander got to work as well. Good job, buddy. Keep at it, while I go look for some more wood to keep this fire going. Things went on like this for a few hours. Pikachu continued his quick attack chaining, Charmander practiced breathing the smoke in and out, and Ash kept the fire going. Eventually, Ash saw that his Pokémon were getting tired and called for a lunch break. Admittedly, Ash was working up a bit of a sweat himself with all the walking back and forth for wood. The three enjoyed a nice lunch, which Bulbasaur even joined in for, comprised of standard Pokémon food and some sandwiches Ash's mom had packed for him. Pikachu griped a bit after being used to the roast berries at the ranch, and Ash promised to get some special food that suited their individual natures when they got to Viridian City. After lunch, Bulbasaur went back into his ball and the other three got back into their routine for a few hours. By the time it was nearing the early evening, Charmander had managed to learn a basic smokescreen and Pikachu was able to increase the duration of its quick attacks, getting closer to a proper agility. Ash was pretty pleased with the progress they were making and praised his Pokémon often. At this point, he ceased training for the rest of the day, calling back Charmander to his Pokeball since he was tuckered out. Pikachu, of course, refused to be confined, and claimed a spot on Ash's shoulder, causing the boy to chuckle. Ash continued walking down Route 1 with Pikachu on his shoulder until it was too dark to properly see. By his estimate, they were a few hours outside of Viridian City. Lucky for Ash and his team, he found that they had arrived at a stream of fresh water. This was the perfect place to make camp for the night. He quickly called out Charmander for some light, thanks to the fire on his tail. Now that he could see better, Ash could vaguely make out some used fishing line and bait on the ground. Someone must have done some fishing not too long back. Shrugging and moving on, Ash put up a tent from his backpack. Had everyone eat a quick dinner and settled in for a well-earned night of sleep. Ash, Pikachu, and Charmander slept together in the tent. Each of them dreamt of battle and victory. It was another early morning as the sun began to rise on Ash and company a few hours outside of Viridian City. Pikachu and Charmander were snoozing away in the tent, unaware that their trainer was already awake and attending to his morning rituals outside. Ash was on his knees by the stream splashing some water onto his face. He was a bit disappointed they hadn't run into any wild Pokémon or any other trainers so far, but was overall happy with the state of his team. Speaking of his team, they were about to be in for a rude awakening. Literally. With a sly grin on his face, Ash walked over to the tent, peeked his head through the opening, and spoke. "Up and at 'em, guys. Daylight is burning. Or it will be soon enough. Time for more training." Half asleep and frazzled, Pikachu and Charmander sprang to attention, looking for the source of the evil sound that dared to wake them at the ungodly hour. They of course find Ash grinning at them and put two and two together. 30 minutes later, the camp was cleaned up and packed, and everyone was ready to start training. Sure, Ash had to dodge a few Thundershock and Scratch attacks from his irate Pokémon, but details like those don't matter that much. Turning to his now fully awake Pokémon, Ash proceeded to explain the early morning training. "We are a few hours outside of Viridian City, guys, and we still have to cover a bit of distance to get there. So I figured we could turn it into some training. Sometimes a battle will last a long time and the winner will be the Pokémon who can endure the most. Rock types can be pretty bulky as well, which means we need to start improving now. That is why we are going to start running every morning to train our endurance and stamina, and this is where I will be joining you guys in training." Pikachu and Charmander didn't think it was a bad idea. Besides, Ash would surely tire out after a little bit, and would let them walk the rest of the way. Those poor naive Pokémon. Ash led the two Pokémon on a 3-hour jog, which turned into a sprint as soon as Viridian City came into sight. By the end of it, Pikachu and Charmander were crawling across the ground, trying to force their worn-out bodies to continue. Ash was exhausted himself, but did not look like he was on death's door. Between their gasping and inhalation of oxygen, Pikachu and Charmander looked at Ash with an expression of disbelief. Ash saw this and nervously chuckled. "Guess I forgot to mention that I have been training for over a year to get ready for my journey," Ash said as he awkwardly scratched his head. The two glared at the raven-haired boy with a look promising similar vengeance to what they dished out earlier that day. After recovering for a few minutes, the three looked around and took in their surroundings. Viridian City was larger than anything they had ever seen. Buildings and skyscrapers covered almost the entire landscape. In the distance, they could see a large Pokémon Center in the middle of the town. According to the town map Ash had packed, the gym was somewhere deeper in the city, but didn't matter much for now since it had a 7-badge requirement for all challengers. Ash figured his Pokémon could use a quick checkup and the three began the trek towards the Pokémon Center. As they got closer, Ash noticed several police cars and officers scouring the center with a checkpoint set up barring anyone from entering. At the center of the mess was an Officer Jenny, who was coordinating the officers. Curious as to what was going on, and still wanting to get his Pokémon looked at, Ash and his Pokémon approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am, what happened here?" "I was hoping to get my Pokémon checked out," Ash said, catching the Jenny's attention. "Sorry, but unless you can show your ID, we are not letting anybody through. A robbery took place last night and several Pokémon were stolen," the officer said, shocking Ash. "What?" the shocked Ash exclaimed. "Who could have done such a thing? And yeah, I got my ID here," said the concerned boy as handed over his Pokédex. Officer Jenny verified his ID, answering Ash while doing so. Eyewitness accounts point to 2 uniformed Team Rocket operatives and a talking Meowth. Though that last part is suspect. We can't take the risk that any rockets might sneak in out of uniform though, which is why we are checking everybody. Speaking of, everything seems to be in order. You can go ahead, young man. Be careful and keep your Pokémon close, warned the officer as she handed back the Pokédex. Thanks, officer. I think I will take your advice now, said Ash, and he immediately recalled Charmander. Pikachu of course refused, but jumped onto Ash's shoulder to stay near the boy. Walking through the checkpoint and up the stairs to the Pokémon Center, Ash was conflicted. On one hand, he was happy his Pokémon were safe and sound, but on the other, he couldn't help but feel that he could have done something to prevent this. Maybe if he hadn't run into Damian and stayed that night at Professor Oak's, he could have stopped those villains from acting. Pikachu noticed the conflict on Ash's face and nuzzled the boy to cheer him up. Thanks, Pikachu. I needed that, Ash said, petting his companion. Ash walked into the Pokémon Center, finding it empty for the most part. A few trainers were inside, some talking to officers and begging them to get back their stolen Pokémon. Ignoring the pit in his stomach at that sight, Ash walked up to the front desk and spoke to the nurse, who he identified as one of the many Nurse Joys of Kanto. Hey Nurse Joy. I was hoping you could look over my Pokémon real quick. They aren't hurt or anything, but they are a bit exhausted from some training. Nurse Joy looked at the boy with a forced smile, still feeling awful for her perceived failure to protect the Pokémon last night. Of course, young man, she said, taking his Pokeballs and Pikachu. Is there anything else I can do for you? Oh yeah. I almost forgot. Can you go ahead and register me for the Kanto League? Asked the slightly embarrassed Ash as he handed over his Pokédex. Sure thing. Nurse Joy took the Pokédex and inserted it into her computer. Some quick typing and clicks later, and Ash was officially registered. There you go, Ash. You are now eligible to compete for gym badges in the Kanto League, and to enter the tournament if you qualify. The next tournament is almost a year away, so you should have plenty of time. Best of luck. As for your Pokémon, I will have them back to you in a few hours. I installed a program on your Pokédex, which will notify you when they are ready. Thanks, Nurse Joy. Guess I will be back later, Ash muttered, taking back his Pokédex. Deciding to use his time productively, Ash exited the Pokémon Center and did some shopping at the local Pokemart. He bought some additional Pokeballs, potions, paralyze heals, antidotes, and awakenings. After all, they would have to cross through Viridian Forest to get to Pewter City, which was full of bug types that could paralyze, poison, or induce sleep quite easily. Ash also kept his promise to Pikachu and picked up some berries and other food specific to each of his Pokemon's preferences. He also bought some easy-to-make meals for himself. Looking at his wallet after all the shopping, Ash frowned. He would have to start winning some battles soon, or he would be broke and forced to head back home. Lucky for him, the money he won from Damian did give him a bit of cushion to work with. Walking back to the Pokémon Center, his thoughts turned towards Team Rocket again. Living in Pallet Town out in the middle of nowhere, Ash hadn't seen the group operate before. The realities of the ugly side of the Pokémon world were just being shown to Ash, and he didn't like it at all. He vowed to stop those criminals if he ever ran into any of them in the future. That would mean upping his training again, but it would be worth it to stop Team Rocket and others like them. Ash's thoughts were interrupted by his Pokédex beeping, indicating that his Pokémon were ready to be picked up. Picking up his pace, Ash made it to the Pokémon Center in no time at all and picked up his healthy Pokémon. Thanks, Nurse Joy. Say, is there anywhere around here that is a good sport for training? Asked Ash. Of course. We have some battlefield in the back for mock battles and training purposes. You probably won't have much luck battling any other trainers with everything going on right now. But you could use it for training all you want, said the nurse. Great. If you don't mind, I think I would like to stay here a few days and do some training. Can I have a room for me and my Pokémon? We have plenty to spare, and as long as you are officially registered to compete, the rooms are free, but you will have to pay for food from the cafeteria if you choose to go, said the nurse, as a voice less than cheery now as she was reminded why the center was pretty empty. Ash was given a key to a room and directed to its vicinity. After settling in and storing his goods, Ash buckled down and got to work. He and his Pokémon would be in for a brutal few days of training. That was the price to be paid on his journey to be a Pokémon master. Ash and his team woke up each morning at the break of dawn and ran around Viridian City until they couldn't go any longer. After that, the group would retire to the Pokémon Center for breakfast. Then they would head out back to the Pokémon Center's practice battlefields to work on their moves. Charmander continued to improve Smokescreen and was able to use the experience to increase his internal body temperature. This allowed the fire type to finally master Ember as well. Meanwhile, the endurance training helped Pikachu to chain together his quick attacks in both a longer and faster manner, which eventually translated into the small mouse Pokémon learning agility. Ash had started him on learning Iron Tail, but Pikachu had little luck thus far where that was concerned. After practicing moves, the group would break for lunch. The afternoon was dedicated entirely to mock battles and strategy. Pikachu and Charmander's rivalry drove the two to give their all. Charmander's Metal Claw grew in strength and Pikachu was able to increase the closing speed on his Thundershock, hitting Charmander a few times from a distance. To Ash's delight, even Bulbasaur enjoyed watching the battles between the two, though the grass type still refused to participate. As Nurse Joy predicted, Ash was unable to find anybody to battle. The group would wrap the day up with dinner and relaxing in the evening, doing nothing of importance. Ash decided to maintain his team's brutal training regime for an entire week. Everyone was exhausted, but they were also far stronger than before. Today, Ash let the team sleep in a bit as a reward for all their hard work. After washing up and a quick breakfast, Ash, Pikachu, and Charmander headed towards the exit of the Pokémon Center. "Ash! Please wait a moment," called out Nurse Joy. "I have a phone call from Ash Ketchum for you." Ash stopped in his tracks and turned white. He couldn't believe he had forgotten to call his mom and the professor. Hopefully, she was in a good mood, he thought as he walked to the video phone and began to pick it up. Otherwise, Ash Red Ketchum. Yeah, he was screwed, and on top of that his Pokémon were giggling behind him. "You have been gone over a week and you didn't think to call your mother," yelled the enraged Ash Ketchum. Mom, Ash tried. "And what is this I hear about criminals robbing the same Pokémon Center you have been staying at? The professor and I have been worried, sick young man." "Mom, please. I really am so sorry," pleaded the somewhat panicking Ash. "Well, you have a funny way of showing it, young man. Next time you don't call your mother the minute you step into a city, I will drag you back home myself." Thoroughly cowed and full of guilt, Ash just nodded his head. "I'm glad we came to an understanding, sweetie," said Delia, flipping her personality back to her normal kind demeanor in an instant. "Now, how is your journey going? Are you staying safe? Remembering to change your underwear?" "Moem," cried the embarrassed boy, looking around. Thank goodness, nobody else appeared to be around, aside from his Pokémon, who were now rolling on the floor with laughter. There goes all the respect he had drilled into them. Turning back to his mother and speaking softly, he answered, "It's going good, Mom. We are all growing really strong. Don't worry though, we are staying safe. I wasn't at the Pokémon Center the night it got robbed anyway. And yes, I am remembering to change my you-know-what every day." "I am delighted to hear it, Ash," Delia cheerfully replied. "Remember to call the professor and let him know you are okay." "I love you, son," the smiling Delia said as the connection mercifully died. Ash's head dropped and he sighed in relief, before turning to his very amused Pokémon. "We can still do some running today if you guys want to keep laughing it up," Ash deadpanned. This sobered up Pikachu and Charmander right away. "I thought so," chuckled Ash. "Guess I better give the professor a call." Ash dialed up the man in question and found Professor Oak staring back at him expectantly. "Hi, Professor Oak," Ash weakly said with a shaky wave. Oak sighed with his fingers massaging his temple. "I will spare you the lecture that I am sure your mother already gave you, Ash, but please remember to stay in touch on a regular basis from now on." "Of course, Professor. Just got caught up in training and..." "Yeah, I promise to give you both a call next time I am in the city," the boy said with his innocent sincerity. Very well, Ash. In other news, tell me about all the Pokémon you must have caught. Why, Gary called me just the other day and said you probably wouldn't have any new Pokémon by the time you reached Viridian City. I bet him $1 million that he would be wrong, said Oak with glee. Well, money isn't everything, Ash said with a sweat drop. Why do I even bother? The disappointed professor responded with his head hanging low. Well, in my defense, Professor, we didn't exactly run into any wild Pokémon on Route 1 other than that one. Hey, wait a minute. I meant to ask you about something important, Ash said excitingly. Oh, replied the professor with renewed interest. I saw this giant bird Pokémon just outside of Pallet Town after I left the lab. It had red, green, white, and gold colors, and was headed west. The funny thing is that Dexter didn't recognize it. Do you have any clues about that Pokémon? Professor Oak was a bit shocked. Based on the description Ash gave, he knew what the boy was describing, but he held it in as he wanted to confirm Ash's story. Hold on, Ash. Let me pull up a picture I have here on screen. An ancient image of the Pokémon, carved in a wooden engraving, appeared on screen. Did it happen to look like this? Yeah, that's exactly right, exclaimed the boy. I'm not sure how it is possible, but it seems you may have encountered the legendary Ho-Oh, an ancient Pokémon of myth from the Johto region that hasn't been seen for thousands of years. In fact, it may have been heading there, if it was indeed heading west as you said, mused the professor. A legendary Pokémon, but why me and why didn't Dexter pick it up? Asked Ash. Your Pokédex is only registered to pick up Pokémon native to the Kanto region right now, Ash, but I will make you a deal. If you manage to collect 8 gym badges, I will upgrade it to the national version. As for why it showed itself to you, who knows? Keep an eye out, Ash, maybe you will see it again someday, smiled the professor. Ash frowned at the vague answer, but accepted it. I guess, and it's a deal about the Pokédex. Well, we have been training long enough and are going to head out to Pewter City for our first gym battle. I'm sure you will do us proud, my boy. Better pick up the pace though. Your fellow Pallet Town trainers have already left for Cerulean City with their first badge secured, Oak warned. What? Ash shouted. Gotta go. Call you in Pewter City. Bye, Ash quickly rattled off as he hung up, scooped up his 2 Pokémon, and sprinted out the doors towards Viridian Forest. On the other end of the line, Professor Oak blinked when the connection abruptly cut off, and then went about his business as normal. Some things will never change, he thought. Meanwhile, Ash was speeding along through North Viridian City, with Pikachu and Charmander hanging on for dear life on his arms. Eventually, the boy took pity on his Pokémon and transitioned into a brisk walk as he came upon Route 2. Charmander decided to rest in his Pokeball, while Pikachu walked alongside Ash. The landscape was full of trees and tall grass. Ash could actually hear wild Pokémon and see flocks of Pidgey fly through the sky high above him. It was a good 30 minutes into the route when Ash heard footsteps rushing towards him and words he longed to hear. Hey you! I challenge you to battle, shouted an approaching boy. Ash grinned and turned to look at his prospective opponent. He found a boy shorter than him in what looked to be a bucket hat, a white sleeveless shirt, and some blue shorts. He also was carrying a big net. Ash had read about this kind of trainer before. Looks like a standard bug catcher. My name is Ash Red Ketchum and I accept your challenge, Ash replied with his exuberant energy. The name is Bug Catcher Ed, and you're going down, replied the boy as he took his place opposite Ash and reached for his first Pokeball. Go Cater Pie, said the enthusiastic bug catcher. A small green worm with red antennas sprung out of the Pokeball ready for battle. Pika! Pikachu, cried Ash's companion. Ready for battle, huh Pikachu? You got it then. I choose you, Pikachu. And the yellow mouse jumped forward onto the battlefield. Ash looked at the situation ahead of him and saw this: his opponent looked to be inexperienced, and his Pokémon didn't exactly scream strength either. No need to analyze things on a deeper level here. Tackle Cater Pie, cried the bug catcher. The small green Pokémon began to move at a decent speed for a worm towards Pikachu, leading with its head. Let's end this quick, Pikachu. Meet it head-on with a quick attack, Ash calmly said. The two Pokémon collided, but thanks to Pikachu's massive speed edge, size advantage, and training, Caterpie went flying back to its trainer. The small green Pokémon had swirls on its eyes and was clearly out for the count, while Pikachu looked like it took minimal damage, if any. Not deterred, the bug catcher recalled his Caterpie and sent out his next choice with no hesitation. Go Weedle! A small yellow worm Pokémon with a stinger on its head and tail appeared on the battlefield. Good work, Pikachu. Time to give Charmander a chance. Return. Pikachu jumped back beside Ash, as Charmander was called out of its Pokeball and onto the field. Charmander, said the fire type, pumped up for battle. Try a string shot Weedle. White threads shot out towards Charmander, who easily dodged the attack without prompting from his trainer. Let's keep our distance, Charmander. This stinger can induce poison if we give it the chance. Start with Smokescreen, called out Ash. The orange dinosaur blew a great amount of smoke onto the field, blocking Weedle's vision and making its eyes water. Get out of there, Weedle, cried out its concerned trainer to no avail, as the little Pokémon began to panic. Charmander took advantage and positioned itself close to Weedle, but out of its eyesight. Finish up with Ember, Ash said in his collected voice. Charmander fired his Ember into the smoke and right at Weedle. A short pained cry was heard, followed by a small thud. A few moments passed and the smoke dispersed, revealing the knocked out Weedle. Return, Weedle, sighed the disappointed bug catcher. Ash also called back Charmander, praising the Pokémon for its good battle. Guess you win, muttered Ed as he handed over some prize money and headed towards Viridian City to heal his Pokémon. It was an easy battle. Okay, a very easy battle, but Ash didn't care. He finally won his first trainer battle, not counting Damian, and he couldn't help but walk with a spring in his step as he neared Viridian Forest. Ash and the gang had been in Viridian Forest for a few hours now. The forest was littered with trees, bushes, webs, bug Pokémon, and more bug catchers, whom Ash promptly defeated with ease. Though Bulbasaur still refused to battle, he did walk with the group outside his Pokeball. Ash noticed that the Pokémon was particularly interested in all the battles he had with the bug catchers. Slowly but surely, his grass type was healing. That said, Ash had no plans on using Bulbasaur at the Pewter City gym. The grass type had no formal training experience, and even if he did decide he wanted to battle soon, Ash didn't feel like there was enough time to properly train him. Ash was interrupted from his thoughts when he heard a growl coming from his stomach and the onset of hunger pangs. Seeing a clearing up ahead, he and his Pokémon settled down for a late afternoon lunch. After all the battling they had been doing, they certainly deserved it. Ash was nibbling on his sandwich, while his Pokémon were eating some berries, when he heard a rustling in a nearby bush. Turning his head towards the noise, he saw a small Caterpie pop out of some bushes. To his surprise, the small Pokémon crawled right up to him and started nudging his leg. Hey there, Caterpie. Do you want something? Asked the confused boy. Caterpie cried out, looking at the sandwich in the boy's hand. Oh. You want some food, huh? Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his Pokédex to analyze the small Pokémon. According to Dexter, the Caterpie knew tackle and string shot. It also had a jolly nature. Reaching into his nearby bag, Ash pulled out a citrus berry and held it out to the small Pokémon. Here you go, Caterpie. It's nice and sweet and I think you will like it. With an appetite and speed that surprised Ash. At least compared to the other Caterpie he had seen, the little Pokémon greedily devoured the berry in no time flat. Giving a loud yawn, the little Caterpie then fell asleep at Ash's feet. Ash didn't know if it was the cute way the Pokémon snored, all the Caterpie he had defeated from the big catchers, or the fact that he hadn't captured a new Pokémon since he left Pallet, but he really wanted this Caterpie. Still, it didn't feel right just capturing the little guy as he was sleeping. Ash was about to nudge the little bug type awake when he heard the cry of a Pokémon above him, and it sounded like the Pokémon was closing in fast. Ash looked up and saw a cream and light brown bird with a red mane diving towards them with its eyes on Caterpie. He identified it right away as a Pidgeotto, Pidgey's evolved form. Without thinking, Ash grabbed Caterpie and dove to the right, just missing the sharp beak of the bird Pokémon as it hit the ground hard. By now, Ash's other Pokémon were moving, aside from Bulbasaur, who looked on with wide eyes at the trainer who saved his Pokémon. Pikachu and Charmander launched themselves at Pidgeotto. Pikachu shot off a quick Thundershock, which the speedy bird Pokémon barely dodged as it started to fly back into the air, but Charmander jumped up and was waiting for the bird. With a vicious metal claw, Pidgeotto was slammed back towards the ground. This time, Pikachu's Thundershock didn't miss and the bird Pokémon was down for the count. Having recovered, and not wasting any time, Ash fired off a Pokeball at the downed bird, sucking it into the capsule. Unable to offer any resistance, Pidgeotto was easily captured as the ball dinged. Ash, being Ash, didn't focus on that immediately, though. Instead, his attention turned towards his Pokémon in Caterpie. Seeing that Pikachu and Charmander were high-fiving one another, and Bulbasaur appeared unharmed, he turned to the Caterpie, still in one of his arms. The small bug-type looked in awe at the human who had risked his hide to save him. "Are you okay, Caterpie?" asked Ash with concern as he gently put the Pokémon down. Caterpie responded by nuzzling his leg. "Well, that's good." Ash sighed in relief. "Before that happened, I was going to ask you a question. How would you like to come along with us on our journey? We train long and hard, but we're still good buddies. What do you say?" Caterpie cried out in joy and nodded its head rapidly. "Great, Caterpie!" Ash beamed. Ash grabbed one final Pokeball and gently tapped it to Caterpie's head, sucking up the small bug type. The ball dinged right away as Caterpie was indeed happy to come along. Ash finally looked towards the Pokeball on the ground with his other new Pokémon. Walking over to it and picking it up, he couldn't help but chuckle. No new Pokémon since Pallet Town and all of a sudden he catches two at once. What great luck! He should probably keep Pidgeotto and Caterpie away from each other for a while. Though, or at least until Caterpie evolves, which should be soon since bug Pokémon go through the process quickly. A well-fought battle and admirable companionship you display with Pokémon. Your Pikachu and Charmander must be well trained to have reacted so fast without your command, said a voice behind Ash. Whirling around, Ash saw a boy dressed up in full samurai regalia, complete with a katana. It was probably the most bizarre thing Ash had seen on his journey, and Ash's face showed it. "I see you two are impressed by my battle armor and blade," replied the boy with no sarcasm. "I seek the trainer from the town of Pallet." "Would that happen to be you?" questioned the boy. Even more confused now. Ash answered honestly. Yes? How did you know?" "I have found you at last," said the oddly dressed boy, leaping in the air with sword in hand and swinging it towards Ash at full speed. Shocked and unable to react, Ash tried to shield himself with his arms and closed his eyes on reflex. No blow came though, and his eyes opened back up to see the blade had stopped short of him and struck the grass. "I am known as Samurai," said the boy, acting as if he didn't nearly skewer the other human being in the clearing. This time Ash interrupted the other boy. He was pissed. "I don't care who you are. What kind of idiot swings a sword at somebody acting like he's about to slice them in half? Only to shrug it off?" Samurai looked back with indifference. "Perhaps I have overestimated you, if you are going to respond with such heated emotion. I have experienced 2 fine battles with other trainers from Pallet Town and was told that one more would be passing through, and so I waited. Maybe I wasted my time," pondered the boy out loud. Having completely forgotten about his literal close shave, Ash jumped onto the fact that this boy must have battled Gary. "What? You fought 2 other trainers from Pallet Town? How did the battles go?" Ash asked curiously. With no shame whatsoever, Samurai replied. "I was crushed." Ash face-faulted at this. However, started the Samurai with determination. "I will avenge my losses and will do it by defeating you now. I challenge you to a battle." If Gary crushed this guy, I can't do anything less than that, thought Ash as he recovered from his earlier face-fault. Looking the Samurai in the eyes, Ash answered. "I accept your challenge, Samurai, but I think you will find yourself going 0-3. "We will see," said the other boy as he took his place opposite Ash. "Pinsir, I choose you," yelled the boy as he sent out his Pokémon. A giant brown beetle with an oval mouth and 2 white horns appeared on the battlefield. Ash was about to call for one of the two Pokémon standing by his side, but another Pokémon interrupted. Bulba! Bulba! Cried out Bulbasaur in an aggressive manner. This turned the heads of Ash, Pikachu, and Charmander. Bulbasaur? Are you saying you want a battle? Asked Ash with a little bit of hope in his eyes. Bulbasaur, affirmed the grass type. Ash couldn't believe it, but if Bulbasaur was choosing now to come out of his shell, he wasn't going to say no. Awesome! Then Bulbasaur, I choose you. Bulbasaur stepped onto the field in front of Ash, while Pikachu and Charmander stood back, watching with interest. Like his other significant battles before, time seemed to slow down for Ash as he formulated a strategy. He had looked over Bulbasaur's attacks with Dexter shortly after taking ownership of the grass type. Bulbasaur knew Tackle, Growl, Leech Seed, and Vine Whip. Though fierce-looking, Pinsir didn't look like it had seen too much action, which meant it probably didn't know any of the bug moves that would be super effective against Bulbasaur, but Ash would still be cautious. Pinsir did outspeed Bulbasaur, but if they could get close, Ash had a way to win. Time sped back up and Ash took the initiative to call out the first attack. Bulbasaur, use Vine Whip. Two vines shot out of Bulbasaur and came straight for Pinsir. A waste of time, said the samurai. Pinsir, use Harden. Pinsir's body firmed up with a light glint, signifying its defenses had increased. Right after this happened, the vines slammed onto Pinsir's body, doing minimal damage. Good job, Bulbasaur. Keep slamming those vines against Pinsir, we'll wear it down, which Bulbasaur proceeded to do. You fool! Revealing your strategy in front of your opponent is a novice move, laughed the samurai. Charge in, Pinsir, and use your bind attack. Pinsir pushed through the vines and began to charge towards Bulbasaur with its horns spreading apart to prepare the bind attack. There was the mistake Ash was waiting for. Recall your vines and stay still, Bulbasaur, Ash calmly said. The grass type obeyed, trusting its trainer completely. Pinsir was a few feet away when Ash made his move. Leech Seed. Right on the open spot between Pinsir's horns and then jump out of the way. Samurai screamed for his Pokémon to dodge. But it was far too late. Bulbasaur launched a Leech Seed from the bulb on its back and it connected just where Ash wanted it. The projectile hitting Pinsir's head threw off his concentration just enough for Bulbasaur to dodge the bind. That's when the Leech Seed sprouted vines all over Pinsir's body and began to zap the energy from the giant beetle, transferring it back to Bulbasaur. Pinsir, try to get that seed off your head. Use your vice grip to see if your claws could crush it. Pinsir obeyed, but the base of its horns just couldn't quite get close enough to dislodge the seed. Meanwhile, Ash and Bulbasaur weren't wasting time. Fire off some more Vine Whip barrages just like earlier. Bulbasaur. After dodging, Bulbasaur had gained some distance from Pinsir and proceeded to further wear down his opponent with more Vine Whip attacks. Frustrated, the samurai tried the first thing he could think of to salvage the battle. If we can't get rid of the Leech Seed, we'll have to knock out Bulbasaur directly. Charge back in for another bind, Pinsir. Ash smiled. Move your vines to either side of Pinsir and let it charge in a bit. Bulbasaur obeyed and the struggling Pinsir barreled towards the grass type. Now bring your vines back and grab Pinsir from behind. Use his momentum to send him flying and end this, Bulbasaur. The vines latched onto Pinsir from behind and, using the Pokémon's own momentum against it, Bulbasaur flung the beetle Pokémon behind himself, directly into a tree. The Pokémon hit the tree hard and sank to the ground. Pinsir, no, screamed Samurai. He quickly composed himself, though, and returned his fallen Pokémon. Great job, Bulbasaur. You were amazing, Ash said as he kneeled down and petted his Pokémon. It appears you have great skill, said Samurai. But I have one Pokémon left. Go, Metapod. Out popped Caterpie's evolution in a hard green cocoon. Wanting to give all of his Pokémon battle experience, Ash called Bulbasaur back, who joined Pikachu and Charmander on the sidelines. Go, Caterpie, said Ash as he called out one of his two newest Pokémon. He might have considered Pidgeotto. But the poor flying type was completely knocked out thanks to Charmander and Pikachu. You dare use Metapod's pre-evolution against me? This battle will be mine, cried Samurai. Ash didn't bother to respond, or to formulate an immediate plan. He waited on Samurai to make the first move. Use Harden, Metapod. A shine ran through Metapod's body as its defense grew. Tackle, Caterpie, called Ash. The small creature crawled at a decent speed and rammed its body into Metapod, doing some minor damage. Ha ha! You shall never pierce Metapod's defenses. Use Harden once again. That was when it hit Ash. Metapod only knew how to use Harden. It was a bit odd, but then again, everything seemed to be with this Samurai guy. Ash decided to get this over with and called for his Caterpie to use Tackle over and over. Samurai countered with more Hardens, proclaiming that his Metapod would never fall. It certainly took a while, but all the Tackle attacks added up, and fall Metapod did. Ash was amused looking at the stunned expression on Samurai's face when, all of a sudden, Caterpie began to glow. A shining white light encompassed the small worm as its form slowly changed. The glow faded away, revealing a freshly evolved Metapod. At this, Ash jumped in the air with delight and ran to hug his new Pokémon. Way to go, Metapod! I knew you could do it! Metapod stayed there with what appeared to be a blank expression. But its eyes shone with happiness. Samurai recalled his fallen Metapod and walked up to Ash and Metapod. It appears I still have much to learn. It was truly an honor battling you, Ash. I vow to train twice as hard and give you an even better battle in the future, said Samurai as he held out his hand to Ash. Ash took his hand and shook it firmly. Thanks for the battle, Samurai. Maybe work on the whole introduction thing, but I'd love to battle you again in the future. Samurai handed over some prize money, the two exchanged pleasantries, and Samurai departed. Ash turned to see Pikachu and Charmander congratulating Bulbasaur and Metapod for their well-fought battles. Things are coming together nicely. And the team is starting to forge some strong bonds, thought Ash. The group packed up the remains from their lunch and continued on the path towards Pewter City, drawing closer to that all-important first gym battle. It took a night of sleep and another half-day of traveling, but Ash could finally see the trees begin to open up. He and his Pokémon sprinted ahead towards the exit, while Butterfree and Pidgeotto flew overhead. That's right. Butterfree and Pidgeotto. After the battle with Samurai and Caterpie's evolution into Metapod, Ash called out his other new Pokémon and began treatment on the wounds it sustained from the earlier battle with Charmander and Pikachu. Thanks to all the supplies he had bought at the Pokemart in Viridian City, treating Pidgeotto was no issue. It was during this time that he explained the group's mindset and goals, which Pidgeotto was happy to go along with. Thankfully, the bird Pokémon no longer seemed interested in eating Caterpie either, now that it evolved. Speaking of Metapod, Ash continued to use it in battle in Viridian Forest against a few other trainers he had come across after Samurai. In his most recent battle, Metapod had knocked out a Kakuna and a Rattata, which ended in a shining bright light and Butterfree emerging from Metapod's cocoon. Once again, Ash felt that good progress was being made. Emerging through the last of Viridian Forest, Ash and company took in the sight of Pewter City in the distance. Even from afar, the city appeared to be stone gray and lied between rugged mountains. There were a few good buildings here and there, but nothing compared to the size of Viridian City. Lots of space was simply filled up by rocks, which made sense, Ash supposed. Ash and his Pokémon were broke out of their sightseeing when an irritated voice spoke up. Young man. You or your Pokémon are standing on my merchandise. Kindly step off, unless you would like to buy something? The sound came from below and Ash looked down to see a rugged older man with a red cap, beard, a cream shirt, green cargo pants, and boots. The man was sitting down surrounded by rocks with price tags attached to them. You're selling rocks? Ash said in disbelief. He recalled his Pokémon, other than Pikachu, and walked down to join the other man, making sure to stay off the merchandise. Pewter City souvenirs. Corrected the man. Are you sure you don't want one? He asked. No, I'm good. You wouldn't happen to know any good spots with lots of rocks not for sale though, would you? Asked the boy. Trying to get around buying my product for some free souvenirs, questioned the man with a glare. I don't want any rocks, screamed Ash. Calming down and exercising some great patience, he continued. I just want a good spot to train my Pokémon for an upcoming battle with the Pewter City gym leader. Wait. You want to challenge Brock? The amused Flint asked. Ha 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 ha. You got no chance, kid. I caught a glimpse of your Pokémon and there is no way they can stand up to him. I'll take my chances. Ash replied evenly. Whatever you say. Sure, I know a place. Follow me, kid, Flint said as he got up and began to walk away. Ash followed and about an hour later the two arrived at a watermill, which was surrounded by rocks and giant boulders. This should be what you are looking for, kid. You can also resupply on water. Best of luck, Flint muttered as he presumably headed back towards his merchandise. This is perfect, thought Ash. He then released his other Pokémon and laid out his plan. Okay guys. Our first gym battle is coming up and we have some last-minute training to do. I wish I could use you all, but according to what I have read, Pewter City gym matches are typically 2-on-2 battles. That is why I am going to be sticking with Pikachu and Charmander for this one. They have been training the longest and have earned the right, but I promise everybody will get a chance in the future. That doesn't mean anybody is going to slack off on training right now though, Ash said with a serious look. We are all going to spend a couple of days here improving. Pikachu and Charmander will be focusing on training for the gym, but I have some plans for you three as well, Ash said, focusing on Bulbasaur, Butterfree, and Pidgeotto. The Pokémon accepted this and looked at their trainer to explain further. Butterfree, I want you to team up with Pidgeotto for a bit. Pidgeotto, work on teaching Butterfree Gust Attack. While you are teaching him the basics, try wearing these rock weights on your wings to improve the power of your attack, Ash said as he tied on 2 small rocks tied with some rope to Pidgeotto's wings. The resistance should improve the power on your gust, but let me know if it gets uncomfortable, okay? Butterfree and Pidgeotto nodded their assent and flew off a distance away to start their training, and Ash turned to Bulbasaur. I want you to work on your endurance training, Bulbasaur. Focus on using your attacks as long as possible, and some long-distance running. This should bring you up to par with the Pikachu and Charmander if you keep at it long enough, explained Ash. His grass type gave an enthusiastic Bulba, and went off to get to work. Now it was time to focus on his Pokémon that would be battling Brock. You already know the strategy for the most part, guys. We are going to beat Brock with our endurance, speed, and steel-type attacks. Charmander. Metal Claw is in good shape, but we can always improve. Go over to some of those big boulders and see if you can use Metal Claw to cut through them. Charmander ran off to the nearest boulder and did just that to Pikachu. I know you don't have Iron Tail down just yet, but you can do it with some more training, and I have an idea, explained Ash. Pika? We need to strengthen your tail and get it used to striking targets. To do that, we are going to start with something similar to Pidgeotto's strength training, said Ash as he pulled out a small rock tied to a string. I'm going to tie this to your tail, buddy, and it is gonna get a heck of a workout. What I want you to do is simply lift it back and forth. Understand, Pikachu? Pikachu had a determined look and nodded. With his Pokémon's consent, Ash tied the other end of the string to Pikachu and his training began. Ash motivated the small mouse by doing push-ups alongside his Pokémon, while giving words of encouragement. In the middle of this training, Ash would take off the rock and throw rubber balls towards Pikachu, instructing the Pokémon to bat them away with his tail. Every now and then, he would check in with the others as well, giving out pointers and praising them for the hard work. The team struggled through this vigorous routine for 3 days. All the while, Flint watched the driven boy hidden from a distance. On the 4th day, the entire team gathered in front of a particularly large boulder. Pikachu stepped forward with a glint in his eye, and Ash gave the command. Iron Tail Pikachu. The Pokémon sprinted towards the rock, enhancing his speed with agility, and jumped towards the rock. Using his momentum, Pikachu spun his body and swung his now glowing tail into and through the rock. Ash smiled. They were ready. After having Pikachu execute the move a few more times just to be sure, Ash called an end to their training. The small camp they made was packed up, and he took his Pokémon to the Pokémon Center to have them treated before the battle. While his Pokémon were healing, Ash figured he might as well resupply on some of the healing materials he had used on Pidgeotto, not to mention the food the team had been eating. On his way back to the Pokémon Center, Ash found his path blocked by the same old man who had shown him his training spot a few days back. "Kid," said the bearded old man. "Old man?" questioned Ash. "Look, the name's Flint. Also, I want to show you something." "Follow me," said Flint as he started walking. Ash's curiosity got the best of him, even if an inner voice thought following a strange old man without any of his Pokémon on hand might not be the safest thing. Flint led Ash to a Pewter City residential area and stopped behind some bushes and a wooden fence. Beyond the fence was an open back door that revealed a large family of spiky-haired individuals, being catered to by what looked to be the eldest of the bunch. "What do you see when you look inside the house, kid?" "Looks like an older brother taking care of his brothers and sisters, right?" asked Ash. Flint smiled softly. "Got it in one, kid, but there is more to it than that. That older sibling happens to be the Pewter City gym leader, Brock." "That's Brock? But he doesn't look anything like what I expected a gym leader to look like, and he doesn't act like it either. He's so gentle and caring," muttered Ash. "He has to be, kid," replied Flint. "Brock's good-for-nothing father left to be a Pokémon trainer years ago and his mom passed away. Being a gym leader helps pay the bills, but those kids still need a parent, and Brock stepped into that role." Ash couldn't say anything to that, so Flint continued. "Truth is, Brock doesn't want to be a gym leader. He has another dream and passion. Taking care of his family has dimmed his flames, though." Flint turned to Ash and spoke seriously. "Kid, I want you to do me a favor. Fight Brock with the same passion and dedication you have shown these past few days in training. Beat him. Help bring his inner fire back." "Wait a minute," Ash said. "How did you know how hard I was training? Were you spying on me?" questioned Ash. Flint ignored him and had already started walking away. "Just remember what I told you. Show Brock your fire, kid," said the man as he continued to leave. Though he was a little peeved at being spied on, Ash had no issues with Flint's request. Going all out was always the plan. Many thoughts ran through Ash's mind as he headed back towards the Pokémon Center, but his upcoming battle with Brock stayed at the center.